Well, good evening. This is Glenn Greenidge and Jackie Grace, and this is our podcast for the month. And we have a very special guest. Mr. Charles Robinson is one of the original members of the International Black Summit at the first annual event in 1991 in Atlanta. And we're going to bring him on shortly. We're going to just read a little quick bio about him. Take it away, Jackie Grace.
Thank you, Glenn. Thank you. And thank you guys for being with us for the second episode of our second season. So imagine that, season number 2 already, episode number 2 of season 2 with Charles Robinson, a really foundational member of the International Black Summit. So as Glenn said, let me read a little bit about who Charles Robinson is. So Charles Robinson has extensive training and experience in labor and employment law and mediation. He's a graduate of the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater and the University of Wisconsin Law School. He's a former administrative law judge and a former special master for the Milwaukee County Circuit Courts. He practiced mediation for 30 years and has served on mediator panels for the Milwaukee County Family Court, the Rocky County Family Court, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the United States Postal Service, and Resolute Systems. He has also managed disputes for universities, prisons, schools, and governmental agencies. Charles also provides training workshops and seminars for schools, businesses, and community groups. Over the course of his professional career, Charles has been an adjunct professor teaching in the schools of human resources and continuing professional services for Springfield College, Milwaukee campus. He also taught paralegal courses in police science for Milwaukee Area Technical College, constitutional law for the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh, and abnormal psychology for Concordia University. While teaching with a commitment to transform socioeconomic conditions and violence in his community, Charles has been an active volunteer community leader. Some of his work includes creating block clubs, serving as district commissioner for the Boy Scouts of America, providing mediation training for law enforcement, facilitating restorative justice for youth and police officers, and serving as a program leader with Landmark Worldwide, a personal and professional training and development corporation. During this interview this evening, we will be asking Charles Robinson about how he effectively uses the tools and distinctions of the International Black Summit in his career, in his community, in his life, and as a past facilitator and ongoing facilitator of the International Black Summit. So welcome, Charles. I'm going to ask Charles to join us in our virtual studio. If we can set him up and ask him to turn on his
video and unmute
video camera.
Okay. My camera's on.
It's not showing on for us yet.
You want the camera too? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
There you go.
All right.
Wonderful, wonderful. Welcome, Charles. Good to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you. And you too, Glenn.
Likewise, it's a pleasure.
You know, reading through your biography, as somebody who also went to law school and practiced law for a little while, just the extensive nature of your contributions, both to the legal profession in your state and area, but also to your community through all of the various roles in your community that you have engaged in and acted as over the years. So just really looking forward to this conversation tonight to dig into that and to really find out how the International Black Summit has either influenced some of the ways that you engage with these different communities, or how it has perhaps contributed to your life over these years. So question number 1 for you, Charles.
Mm-hmm.
What was your first exposure to the International Black Summit? Like your first event, your first conversation with somebody about it way back then?
Well, I live in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. We don't have a center, a landmark center. It used to be Warner Earhart and Associates Center in Wisconsin. So I traveled back and forth to Chicago quite a bit after I did my forum. And I connected with a group of people, including Kuumba, who is, I would consider, a legend within the International Black Summit Network. And she was home based in Chicago. But when she rallied people in the Chicago area, and because we were affiliated with the Chicago area, because we didn't have a center here in Milwaukee, she rallied me as well. And when she made a request to be involved in Atlanta in 1991, I have no idea how I got there, but I got there.
In
Because Kuumba said
1991.
she's a very powerful leader.
Absolutely.
That's Mother Kuumba
Mother Kuumba, exactly.
to a lot of us. Yes,
I
absolutely.
remember Kuumba too. She was definitely a force to be reckoned with when I first got introduced to the International Black Summit many, many years ago. And for those of you who are listening and are not familiar with the origins of the International Black Summit, it was initially created by African American participants and seminar leaders from an organization called Landmark Worldwide. And so at that point, a lot of people were meeting each other through Landmark Worldwide at the time that the organization was created back in 1991. So
Yes,
we
when
made
I
it to
heard
that
about that
first event.
conversation, I was so excited when I heard about that conversation about coming together, because back in those days, there were very few Black people participating in those seminars and workshops and forums. And the technology, the training was so powerful, we wanted to bring it into the Black community. And so when I heard about the conversation of convening in Atlanta, Georgia, I was so excited about that. And that was my first experience.
So when you went to that first session in Atlanta, that was 1991 in Atlanta, or was 1991 in Chicago?
1991 in Atlanta.
Atlanta,
Oh, so that would have
Georgia.
been the pre-meeting.
Yeah, in Chicago, that was like a pre-meeting. We were getting
Oh, Chicago was the pre-meeting. Sorry, I'm getting it mixed up in my head.
Mhm.
Okay,
And
got it.
in fact, they had a couple pre-meetings in Chicago, from what I understand. They had a couple phone calls, and then they had a pre-meeting. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. And so that was for those who were listening, that was the formulating of the conversation. So it originally started out with two women. One, they were in this program uh, that was offered by Landmark, and one was getting a divorce, and the other one was getting married. And so they said to each other, wouldn't it be great if we had a space for Black men and Black women to get together and to be able to talk to each other and to just provide support and empowerment. And so that's what germinated the conversation and led to this conference, this happening in Atlanta in October 7th, 1991, which
Yeah,
was,
and
yeah, go ahead.
I'll just mention, if anybody's interested, our first episode of season number 2 was an interview with one of those two women. So if anybody wants to find out more about that whole process, how the two women came together, created the idea, and started this ball rolling, you can look up and listen to the first episode of season number 2 of the podcast.
Great. So Charles, so now you heard this conversation, you're excited, you went to the pre-meeting, kind of got a glimpse of what to expect. What was your anticipation coming to Atlanta, Georgia, and what were your thoughts that could happen at that point in time?
I had no idea it would turn out the way it did, but I was so excited to be in the same room with, I think it was like 137 other people of color, Black people who had actually participated in some of these transformational courses. The technology of transformation for me was awesome, and I was volunteering with the Prison Possibilities, the original Youth at Risk program, whatever organization was there, I wanted to support it if it could make a transformative difference. And so when we came to Atlanta, I had some possibilities in my mind about what could happen, but it was amazing that it turned out the way it did.
Well, you know what? Let me back up for a second and let people know. So, Prison Possibility was a program that was created by a brother that took this technology from Landmark and went into the prisons to work with prisoners. The Youth at Risk program was a program specifically, again, using this technology, this transformational technology, to impact gang violence around the country. So, Youth at Risk were really designed to go into the big cities, Chicago, LA, New York, Connecticut, places where Philadelphia, where gang violence had become very prevalent. And so they were using this technology to really have the gangs see beyond their colors and the violence that they were accustomed to. And so Charles was part of both of those programs prior to coming into the International Black Summit. Again, this is the first time that the people of Black African descent from this bigger organization came together specifically to have a conversation, to impact, and to bring transformation to what we designated as the Black community. And of course, that was people from Africa, that was people from the Caribbean, that was African Americans, that was Canadian Americans,
Or
and
Canadians.
so forth. Yes.
Canadian Americans.
Black Canadians.
As a Canadian.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So now you had these expectations. What were you surprised by at the event, Charles?
Well, like I came into the summit, well, the formulation of the summit with all of these opportunities for myself, because I was working in a prison environment at the time. I was like an assistant administrator in a prison. And then I was also the district commissioner for the Boy Scouts of America. So the Youth at Risk program and Prison Possibility, that was right up my alley. I could see how if we could bring Black people together and begin to transform some of those systems and some of those structures, that was the possibility that I was noticing that I had in mind. And then when we began to look at, well, how can we bring this technology into the Black community? And then after that first night, we stayed up. We stayed up all night and created the declaration of the International Black Summit.
Well, let's talk a little bit just before that. The Saturday of the weekend, because it was Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, there was a session where they broke it down into various interest groups, nurturing relationships, mental health, well-being, youth, economic development.
How we show up in the media.
How we show up in the media. Yeah, so we had all of these different sort of like sections that people could visit and express their interest in, that was the area that they'd like to work in, and using it as a networking opportunity. And so the onset of that conversation, so take it from there, Charles.
Well, I remember we were up trying to pull all of these things together, to pull the declaration together, and it took all night. but it was amazing that we were able to accomplish so much in one setting. It was, and the following day, I distinctly remember that even though I hadn't slept, I wasn't tired at all. I was actually empowered after participating in that the drafting of the declaration.
Well, Charles, want to thank you for being part of the team that drafted that declaration. You know, it is something that we as an organization have found ourselves in, have used as a vision to call the organization forward. I've gotten lots of value for myself out of that declaration. So I think this would be a great time for us to generate the declaration. And then after that, I'd love to get a sense from you about how the declaration and other tools and distinctions from the International Black Summit, how you use those tools in your work or in your life. So let's take a look at the declaration now. The declaration that Charles was so an instrumental part of the team that worked on creating this declaration. And I'm not surprised that you were left energized by it, by the creation process, because it is a powerful, powerful statement.
Okay. Well, I'm having trouble sharing it.
You know, it's interesting. While Glenn's pulling that up, Glenn, let me know if you'd like me to share it. I went through a process as a facilitator trainee. So in the training body for facilitators of the International Black Summit, when I joined, you had to join as a trainee. And at that time, there was a process where you were recommended to memorize the Declaration of the International Black Summit and to have the capacity to generate it by heart. So these are words that many of us over the years have learned by heart. So I'd love for you to generate it, Charles.
Oh, sure. The Declaration of the International Black Summit. We declare ourselves, our community, and all communities whole and complete. There's nothing to do except be. We assert that we are responsible for generating community as possibility and distinction. We listen for and grant being to the possibility and creation of unpredictable results. Our conversation of, about, and for those of African descent is one of power, self-generation, abundance, responsibility, unity, and integrity with the possibility of being. We stand for the expression of our spirituality, ending the murders of our men, women, and children, building economies responsible for funding our community, maintaining wellness of being in our bodies, providing human services, establishing nurturing relationships, altering the conversation of who we are in the media, empowering our youth. We declare that our community manifests itself in the world as a contribution in the transformation of the universe. Atlanta, Georgia, October 7th, 1991.
Atlanta, Georgia, October 7, 1991. How could I forget that it was Atlanta that first year? So a quick question for you, Charles. Do you have a sense of how many annual summit events you have attended over the years? I mean, it's been over 30 years now. Do you have a sense of how many of the annual events you have attended?
You know, I didn't attend very many. After the original meeting, the founding meeting in '91, I got married with children, and so I had a blended family, and my children were busy in all kinds of sports and athletics and music, and I just didn't take time to travel abroad as much as I wanted to. My next summit was in the year, I think, 2000. when we went to we were in New York / New Jersey, and then subsequent after that, I think I was involved in four more, actually five more summits, and I'm so glad I was able to get back in touch with that conversation. And I'm just amazed at how when we meet and people stand up and recite the summit and at the end, yeah, the declaration, and at the end of our meetings they recite the declaration. It just makes me feel like if I don't do anything else in life, my life was worthy because I made a difference by participating in that conversation.
Yeah, it's wonderful that you were really able to make such an important contribution to the creation of that declaration. And so I had said earlier that you were a past facilitator and ongoing facilitator of the summit. Were you ever a member of the, was that accurate? Were you ever a member of the facilitator body?
No, I haven't. I've never been a member of the
Okay,
facility
so let's
body.
correct that now.
Yeah, yeah.
I misspoke. I misspoke. So I do want to get a sense though from you, given the breadth of the work that you do and your instrumental contribution to the creation of the declaration and participation in other aspects of the summit, including our distinctions. Just to get a sense from you, um, the whether or not there was a shift in how you engage in some of your work as a result of the declaration or a result of the summit tools? Like, is there any specific way that you use any of the tools of the summit in your work or in your life?
Yeah, my stand is for peace, healing, and collaboration in the world and in my community.
Mm,
And the one of the things that I got out of the summit that has me operate with distinction, I believe, is the sense of community. And before I participated in the summit, I didn't have that sense of who community was. And it was, I think, in Detroit when I was challenging the summit for the conditions. When we read what's in the declaration and what we stand for and all the possibilities there, and we look at what's happening in the world, in our community, and the conditions. And I was actually critiquing the summit. I said, well, what are we doing about it? And then I think it was John Thomas at the one of the facilitators challenged me to look within myself, and then I began to see that the summit is who was sitting in my seat. It's like I am the summit, and
mm.
I began to operate as community. And so when I show up in community meetings, like in my city, I I feel like who community is me, and I'm bringing community to whatever we're up to, and it's very very empowering.
It's interesting. I love what you just shared because for me, it reminds me of some of the aspects of the declaration. The line of the declaration that says our conversation of, about, and for those of African descent is one of power, self-generation, responsibility, unity, and integrity with possibility of being. So I'm really hearing the conversation around responsibility there. Like when you show up and you say that you are showing up as community, what
Mm-hmm.
I hear is that you are taking responsibility for community. Like
Yeah,
that community isn't something out there that handles itself. That community is, in Jamaica,
exactly.
Rastafarians say I and I. They don't say we. Like, what's the we thing? It's I and I,
Yeah,
right? It's just a group of I's. That's all we have is a group of people. And
yeah,
I am one of them. I am one of the I's. So if this is going to shift, this I needs to shift too. And if this, and so I'm really hearing that level of responsibility for your community and a willingness to stand in that space, and self-generation inside of that as well.
You know, and I would add, because I was also at the first one, I think that there was a sense of ownership that
Yeah.
that took place in that meeting. Because I was, even though I had formulated a group in New York and we were looking to make transformation available in the tri-state area, there's something that this International Black Summit called to me and called to us who showed up at that first event as a belonging. And I don't know that I belonged to my community as powerfully before that conversation. And the declaration kind of matted it, just made it, connected the dots that were missing for me, inside of that ownership and owning and being responsible for community. So that declaration really kind of catapulted, speak for myself, catapulted me in a direction that I hadn't experienced before. And I think that's what you were pointing to as well, Charles.
Yeah, and the level of relationship that we had, because we were sharing our experiences in the first summit, and we all had so much in common, and we had similar stands and commitments. And when we got in touch with that, it was just like being in heaven. And then when we began to meet throughout the African diaspora and noticed that, like, what we're dealing with here in America is being, Black people, people of African descent are facing those same issues and conditions all throughout the world. And so that, for me, is when I think about that, I I get excited, and I see the possibility that we can actually come together, and if we do, the world would be much different.
Absolutely. Now I know we've been chomping at the bit to find out a little bit about. So, what were some of the distinctions that maybe your favorite distinction, or one of the distinctions that really kind of galvanized with you at the summit that you're actually still using today, maybe?
Well, the conversation, I am, resting in the I amness, um, looking at who I am authentically as as a as a self, like looking at my authentic self and distinguishing my authentic self and noticing the relationship that it is with spirit. One of the things with Landmark, of course, they don't deal with religion or spirit, and that's what's so unique about the summit. Even though we share the technology transformation, getting in touch with who I am spiritually and my authentic self, and constantly, looking at that and distinguishing that is what I'm getting out of my participation in the International Black Summit.
That's so great. You know, one of the, so one of the tools that we have in the summit is an annual question. So every year out of the annual summit event, we create an annual question, an inquiry that as participants and facilitators, we kind of dig into and explore over the course of the subsequent year until the next annual summit event. And so you're pointing to the current question, which is the question that we're taking into 2024, but it's also the question that we brought into 2023. We decided to repeat it again. Glenn, do you
Yes.
have the question?
When I become present to I am, what is to rest in the I amness? So it's really a conversation of, when I get present to I am, the power of I am, what is to rest in the I amness, or the space of being present to I am. And so that's the current question that the annual inquiry, or two annual inquiries, are actually engaged in as we become present to our spirituality. What's our relationship? What are we present to? And what is available inside of that? So that's what Charles is pointing to, and Grace so eloquently pointed to, that's what we've been engaged in specifically.
You know,
Go ahead.
I do want to add that the summit for me is a space that accepts people of all kind of spiritual and religious backgrounds, including atheism. So as a community of Black people, we often talk about the fact that we as Black people are spiritual people. And I believe that to be true, even for Black people who are atheists. you know, like it doesn't matter what your particular, whether you believe in a God or the universe. It doesn't matter. I do believe that as a culture, we are grounded in something more than just the physical manifestation of who we are. We are music and sound and energy and art and creativity. And for me, all of those things are also spirituality. And so, whether we want to call that spiritual or not, I just want to be clear that the space of the International Black Summit is completely welcoming of all perspectives in that realm, and certainly all kinds of backgrounds and ways of being. People come with all kinds of ways of being, and it's all good. It's all good.
Mhm.
So, did you have a favorite annual summit event, Charles, of the ones that you've attended, the half dozen or so? Did you have a favorite one?
The favorite one, I think, was in New York, New Jersey, um, 2000, and I got a chance to be reunited with people I had met in '91, including Olubade, and of course Glenn, um, and uh, and DC too. I really like DC because I had a chance to um, be in DC, and I had a chance to discover DC and get back in touch with an old buddy of mine who we played college football together. Joe Madison, the Black Eagle. He's a talk show host, and the place that we had the summit was about 6 blocks from his office. And one morning early, I was walking, and I looked up and I saw XM radio. I wonder, is that where Joe Madison's office is? So I surprised him. This was like early in the morning, 6 o'clock before our session started. And I walked in, and ultimately I wanted to surprise him, but he found out I was in the office and in the building, and he called me up, put the headphones on me, and now here I am talking to the world in Joe Madison's studio. But that was a very that was one of my favorite as well. All of them were great. DC um, was great too. We got a chance to go back and look at what happened when we broke in relationship with Warner Earhart and Associates, or what is now called Landmark, and we had a chance to complete that for ourselves as a body. And I was glad that I was there because we had people who were actually in the room back in those days. I can't remember the names, but I'm sure Glenn remembers um, when they had the summit in Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
And then subsequently there was a break in relationship with Landmark. And we had a chance to actually look at that, what happened, and complete it.
Yeah, one of the things is, organizational relationships. So there were individual relationships because people were in both, um, both organizations, and there was clearly a demarcation in terms of, okay, you're going ahead and do your own thing, but you're not part of this old organization, so you really have to develop. So the International Black Summit had to really develop its own work, its own body of work, to utilize the transformation that was available in the other organization. And so over the years, over the 30 years, we've developed what we call distinctions. And some of the distinctions that we use is no right way to be, no out there, trigger, and these are words that we use inside the International Black Summit, but we have a particular meaning that in terms of how we use them. So we use them a little differently than if you just look it up in the dictionary. So no right way to be is a conversation around the opportunity to look to see what's available outside of what I think is the right way to be or the right thing to do. And so it has me as an individual begin to look outside of myself, outside of what I have called um, the right and wrong way of being, and so that has me look at the decisions that I'm making and the judgments that I'm making and all of the conversations that are associated with this is the way it is, as opposed to, well, maybe not. Maybe there is another alternative or another way of looking at it. And the one of the things I say a lot is one of the annual event conversations was be with what is. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that was one of the biggest revelations for me inside of this body of work in terms of accepting what I've created, because I created whatever it is that's in front of me, and being responsible for that and being okay with it and not making myself wrong because I should be someplace other than where I am. So being with what is was one of those kind of gripping conversations that I have with myself around, well, wait a minute, you caused this, you created this. So why are you having something about it? Who you upset with? Yourself? you know and so you really has you look, and these are the kinds of conversations that we've developed over the 30 years, and we could spend another 3 or 4 hours talking about all the
Oh, easily.
distinctions that we have, that we use, and how that we use them. So Charles, I'm going
Uh,
to shift the conversation a little bit.
I
So
do want to say something
okay.
about be with what it is before we move
Oh,
off
go,
of that
go ahead,
distinction, because
Grace. Yes.
I love there are several many of our distinctions and tools that I really love. Be with what is one of them for me, because it is a distinction that for me really has me get present to reality. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what is true right now? What is so right now? Not what's the story I'm making up about it, not the dreaminess that I don't really want to look at it. Like, it really makes me look like, am I standing in mud right now, or am I not standing in mud? Like, am I standing in mud, but I'm telling you I'm actually on the beach. You know what I mean? Like, I'm trying to pretend like I'm not where I am. I'm spinning it to other people like it isn't what it is. It is what it is. I'm standing in mud. Let me be with the reality that I'm standing in mud, and let me now look, okay, do I want to continue standing in the mud? Do I want to actually get out of the mud? Do I want to try to lift my foot up and move it over there out of the mud? You know what I mean? Like, let me just get present to what the reality is, as opposed to distancing myself or dissociating myself from the reality in a way that doesn't give me power. Like, to be able to be in the reality while also being in possibility. That's where for me the magic is, to be able to acknowledge the reality, but be in and have the energy of the possibility that's coming and know that possibility is coming regardless of what mud is here right now. So one of my
Absolutely.
favorite distinctions.
Absolutely.
One of mine too. And besides, no out there.
Okay, go
Yeah,
ahead.
we're actually creating what we perceive, and we're powerful. We're co-creators with God, and so what shows up, however it shows up, we can create a empowering context for life. That's what I get out of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you said something very powerful, and I just want to repeat it. We're co-creators with
Mhm.
God. You know, like really getting that we've got that power and that essence of empowerment inside. And it's inside of all of the distinctions. All of the distinctions are geared at empowering. And so you get to use, you kind of get to pick and choose, you know. Some people like pork. Some people like chicken. Some people like beef. Some people like
Tofu.
fish. Some people like tofu. And so we have like a little selection so you can kind of pick which ones resonate for you, which ones you feel more comfortable with. So we give you, you know, we give you like a menu so that you can use to empower yourself, to keep yourself on track, keep yourself on purpose, and keep yourself inspired around the things that you say you're committed to. And that's what I want to go to. So, Charles, tell us a little bit about some of the work that you're doing and how you're able to utilize these distinctions and transformation in the work that you're doing in the legal area and some of the other areas that you're working in.
Well, most recently, I was able to pull together a group of mediators and people who practice restorative justice, and I got an opportunity to work with the Office of Violence Prevention, and I thought if we could create, as I mentioned before, you may recall, where I show up, I'm showing up as community. So
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to show up as an individual trying to, solve this problem of violence um, and trauma in our community. I think that in order to have the impact that I want to have, and I think other people want to have as well, is to move as community. So I brought together this coalition of mediators and restorative justice practitioners, and we call ourselves MOCA, Mediators of Color. Um, and I got in touch with a group in Maryland who created MOCA, and that's something that I thought we could stand on the shoulders of MOCA and begin to deal with the violence and the trauma that's plaguing um, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and in other cities as well. I also finally did this course. It's actually a program called Self-Expression and Leadership a couple years ago. After I did the forum, I was really busy volunteering and with so many things. I never got a chance to do self-expression leadership. And then when I did self-expression leadership and was able to gain more power uh, within this context of community, I um, I had a project, but then that project created two more projects. So, and one of the projects was the um, the healing and empowerment circle, restorative circle for fathers who were having difficulty being integrally involved in their children's lives. And Glenn and some of the other brothers, some of the other participants in the summit helped me to pull that off too. And so for 3 years, we actually made that available. Um, One of the projects that came out of self-expression leadership, besides that the co-parenting project was my getting involved with a local park called the Sherman Park. Sherman Park is in the heart of Milwaukee, and there have been a lot of violence. A few people have gotten shot on the basketball court. And back in the day, that was our home court for tennis. We had a black tennis organization, but things have changed since the 70s. And I had an idea of getting in touch with those past tennis legends and restoring the park. And so we did that. We created a foundation, Friends of Sherman Park Foundation, to repair the tennis courts and to make the park safe and clean. So that's just two things that I've done most recently.
Wow.
And,
Really, really inspiring projects, you know.
and another thing
I don't even want to say what my project was. I know the self-expression and leadership program is so small. It was certainly not world transforming my self-expression leadership program project.
one other thing I did, I had the audacity to go back to my undergraduate campus, where back in the 60s, we were protesting the lack of Black studies. And you see my t-shirt on my
Yeah, great hoodie.
and so I was one of two students involved in the faculty curriculum committee that created a minor degree in African American Studies at UW-Whitewater. And when I heard that a lot of those programs are being watered down and eliminated, I got in touch with the campus and started asking questions. And they invited me to come back and visit. One of the programs in the communication department, cross-cultural communications, was one of the courses that I advocated for. And so now they have a whole department, and they asked me to come back and meet several sections of the course and the faculty, and that was really what's the word? I was very happy to be able to go back. It was very delightful to meet these students 53 years from when we created that program, the minor degree in African American Studies program. And but you know, like what's happening all over the country, those programs are now being watered down, and what used to be African American Studies is now something different. It's like ethnic studies, women and ethnic studies, or something. So we have a lot of work to do, because they don't want us to know our history, and knowing our history is so important. The symbol of the bird Sankofa, moving forward, looking back with the egg in its mouth, is so important. If we don't know our history, then we don't know where we're going.
You know, it's interesting, this conversation that you know, today is not the 70s, to how things have shifted since the 1970s. And we had a conversation recently, for those of you who are listening and are familiar with us, you may know that we have a session every Sunday evening, a free session for people to come and gather in these Sunday evenings. And recently you had a conversation looking back over 30 years. The conversation was, what was your conversation about Black community and Black people 30 years ago? And what is your conversation about the Black community and Black people today? You know, and in what ways have those conversations transformed? In what ways have those conversations stayed the same? You know, all of that. So we had a great dialogue, a great round circle about that. And I'm curious, Charles, when you look back, you don't have to go all the way back to the 70s. I'm really kind of curious from your first participation in the International Black Summit in 1991, when you look at what was true then in terms of your conversations about Black community, Blackness, Black people, all of that, and then you look at what your personal conversations about those things are today, would you say that the conversations and the realities have transformed for you, or what would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I'm when I look at what's happening today, I'm kind of I'm disappointed with the lack of parenting and the lack of socialization that the young people are getting. And it appears to be because of a breakdown in the family structure, and fathers, for a number of reasons, are not involved in their children's lives. And so now it look like co-parenting is what we need to address, because people don't live in the same households. The family structure broke down. I'm doing some substitute teaching right now in an alternative school, and I'm taking surveys about what these young people want to do in the future. What's in your future, and many of them are saying they want to be rich, they want to be millionaires, and they want to have children, but they don't want to be married. And,
Mm.
and I thought that was very interesting. And so, and then on top of that, the disrespect um, is off the chain, with the use of profanity and the the way the young brothers are interacting with the females. It's just, I'm concerned. I'll put it that way. And we have the technology to transform that. But I think it's going to take all hands on deck, and it's going to have to be a sea change. And a sea change must include young people. It's got to be intergenerational. So we need to find a way to do that.
So question for you. Like, I'm really present to some of the things that are not what you would have wished for, in terms of that, the past 30 years, that some shifts haven't happened the way you might have liked. So when you look back and you look to today, are there things that have happened that you're happy have happened or are grateful? Like, what would you say are the positive shifts?
Okay. The fact that the International Black Summit has met on 4 continents and all throughout the African diaspora, and obviously has had an impact on people of African descent all over the world. And with those connections, I see the possibility of decolonizing Africa. I see the possibility of people becoming more, people of color becoming more accountable and responsible for how we show up in the world, and also how we provide for ourselves. That conversation is still there, still alive. And when I think about how Africa was divided, and its resources raped by the European countries, and now with this coming together of the African diaspora, maybe once and for all, children who pick the cocoa bean will have a chance to taste what chocolate is like, because that's not happening. And all of the minerals that come out of Africa, perhaps we can join hands and create manufacturing and processing plants where we don't have to rely on um, European countries to do that, because right now that's what's happening.
It's interesting. I Glenn, I might have taken us a little off
That's fine. We're
off
good. We're
script.
good. We're good.
I'll go a little off script. I pretend like we actually have a script. Um, but I'm completely with you on the conversation around Africa and the kinds of things that you're pointing to. I'm really personally very encouraged by the kind of conversations that I'm seeing happening on TikTok and YouTube. I'm really clear that Africa as a continent, the conversations around Africa coming together as a continent are very, very strong and are building. And so seeing the shared conversations with people who are in South Africa and East Africa and West Africa and North Africa and the Caribbean and the United States and Canada engaging in these conversations, and the UK engaging in these conversations, really looking at a global perspective. I'm really personally very happy to see how those conversations have been building in recent years. And I'm also really happy with some of the conversations that younger generations, millennials and Gen Z, are having around their perspective on decolonization, really having shifts in conversations around white supremacy and patriarchy. Like from my perspective, those generations aren't joking around,
Oh,
right?
I'm glad
Like
to hear that.
that's what I'm seeing. Now, I may only be seeing a slice of those generations. I'm not saying that there aren't segments of those generations that are not participating and that are all about, hair, nails, and basketball, but which are good things too. Don't get me wrong.
Mhm.
But I've been really impressed by the number of young people who are very, very deeply engaged in those conversations. I think there's a lot of good stuff happening there.
Now, those Canadian conversations or conversations outside of Canada?
Uh, Outside of Canada, to be honest,
Okay.
I'm looking there. There are Canadian conversations happening, and there are things happening on the ground. I mean, I won't get into the stuff that's happening here, but there's been a lot that has shifted here since the George Floyd incident in 2020. Since 2020, there's been a real shift in conversations, even a shift in how many people smile at me when I walk down the street. I'm like, oh, somebody did a diversity, equity, and inclusion workshop at your workplace. I
Yeah,
see.
right.
So
The interesting thing about it all is really all about us being connected. When you look at the Declaration, it's about us getting together and being connected and being one conversation. And I think that for me, that's one of the standout points of the International Black Summit, because it's about us getting together and working together towards a common goal, a common goals, I should say, when we look at it. And Charles, certainly your work has been a demonstration of that throughout all the years. When I look at all of the different conversations that you've been part of, you've been very strategic in terms of where are the areas that can impact us getting together and bringing us together. And certainly the legal field is a huge one that has so much disparity in it. And you've been tackling that one. You've been working with kids. You've been working with sports. You've been working with fathers, getting them connected to families. All of these things are the root fundamentals of us hearing each other and working together with each other. So just really want to acknowledge you and thank you for all these years of work that has been so instrumental in moving this conversation forward.
Well, you have been my inspiration as well. I mean, our partnership and being in a relationship with you and the members of the International Black Summit has provided the inspiration to keep me moving. That conversation is is very powerful and has an impact on me spiritually. And now that I know that I am the summit, I show up with the declaration in my heart.
Absolutely.
That's great. I'm just so clear that the organizations that you work with, the people that you support, are just so lucky to have you. You know, the strength and clarity of perspective that you bring and the vision that you stand for. It's so clear, even though you haven't, you shared with us a little bit. I'm going to ask you to actually repeat your possibility. You did share it with us earlier.
My possibility?
Yes,
Oh,
your
about,
possibility or vision. It was, sorry, go
oh,
ahead.
oh yeah. I believe that inside of a conversation, any problem can be resolved within the context of a conversation. And I see people having disputes that sometimes go unresolved and sometimes fester and go into rage, and then ultimately more trauma, and that's unnecessary. And so, what I want to do, as much as possible, is to um, have an impact on peace, healing, and collaboration.
Peace,
Because
healing, and collaboration. Yes.
yeah, because when we can create peace, and we have a lot of processes to do that, mediation, the circle process, restorative justice, we can get to a point where we can heal, but we have to notice that we need healing and take responsibility for healing ourselves. And then once we are healed, we can collaborate, and just think how powerful we are when we collaborate.
Peace, healing, and collaboration. I'm just very present to that vision, and I'm also very present to how committed you are to that vision, in part by how much you see where it isn't yet available and how much you want to bring that to the spaces that don't have that yet. I'm just really clear that that's the strength of your commitment to that vision. And so I'm just really clear that the communities and the organizations and people that you work with are lucky to have you standing for that vision for them and for us, for the world.
Well, thank you so much. And
Thank
we
you.
carry trauma down. Trauma can be handed down. I've heard up to 14 generations. So what's happening in Israel right now between Israel and Hamas and the Palestinians and in the Middle East is obviously based on a lack of healing, where the
Definitely
Jewish
there's
people
a
were,
healing
you know,
question
they
there
were
for
they were
sure.
traumatized. They were persecuted for all those years, and now it's it's a vicious cycle.
Both sides,
Both sides.
um, you know, have trauma. Whether or not they're equivalent traumas is a separate conversation, but both sides certainly
Y-
are
y-
dealing
y-
with trauma.
and I might add that one of the um, areas that the International Black Summit really works on is creating a vision, vision for yourself, the Black community, and the world. So that's part of the work that gets done inside of the conversation. And of course, healing is part of that conversation, having the conversations that may be uncomfortable, but getting it out so that you now can identify
Yeah.
that there's a need and for the healing and begin to do the healing work, because it's for me it's very therapeutic to have engaging conversations about who we are as people of Black African descent.
Mhm.
And this platform affords me the opportunity to engage with like-minded individuals who are up to making a difference out in the world, and um, and making things happen. So
Well, Jackie said it, she said, facing reality is so important. There's a Baldwin quote, James Baldwin says, not everything that you face can be changed, but nothing can be changed unless it's faced.
Mm,
Yes.
thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I'm always ready for a James Baldwin quote.
I got another one for you, but I can't remember it verbatim. But he says that history lives and controls us unconsciously.
Mm,
Oh, for
History
sure.
lives in us and controls
Oh,
us unconsciously.
woo, I need to snap. That's a word.
yes. Yes.
For sure. If
Well,
you can lean,
you're gonna wrap us up, Grace?
I will. I will. Yeah, I'm gonna ask to lean back and see the hoodie again.
Oh,
So Charles, because some people listen to this just audio, so they're not going to see what you're wearing, the audio. So you have a hoodie on. It's a black hoodie with words on it that say Black history is powerful. Black history is powerful in the colors Ike Skull and green, as we say in Jamaica. Ike Skull and green. And so Black history is powerful. I cannot agree more. I couldn't agree more. And so there, as we talk about, just uh, we're talking about what's happening in the world right now. One of our last questions, here's the last question I'm going to present for you, to you. What are 3 wishes that you have for the world right now? What are 3 wishes that you have for the world right now?
one wish would be for the world to see, to notice that there's enough for everybody. Another wish would be for the world to spend the resources that it's spending right now on war, to spend those resources or a portion of those resources on creating peace. And if we did that, we would have peace in the world. Another wish would be for um, children to have access to their parents and be parented in a way that would have them flourish in life. And that when that's not possible, that the community step in and create community parenting.
Thank you. Beautiful. Beautiful.
Well, again, Charles, just thank you for who you are, the work that you're doing, the lives that you continue to impact, and the conversations that you begin to carry out into the field, out into the world, to champion these kinds of things and these atrocities um, and out of balance conversations that need to be put in balance. So thank you so much. Thank you for being part of this podcast tonight, but just thank you for being the man, the Black man that you are out in the world. I love you, my brother.
But thank you. I love you too. And I remember you all the way back when I first met you. And you haven't changed. You have been consistently committed and in action. And Jackie, I have always admired you, and I met your father as well. And he comes on our not podcast. We have a virtual Zoom session once a week, and he comes and contributes every week. And he's disappointed when we don't meet. I didn't meet last
He
Wednesday.
sure
I
is.
was available. I have to apologize to him for that. But you come from great stock, and it's obviously in the genes. So I admire both of you. I appreciate you. I love you, and keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you so much for being with us tonight, Charles. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you to everyone who's watching on YouTube, or if you're listening on our audio channels on Spotify or on our podcast website. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being with us. Just a reminder, you can find out more about us anytime by going to the website, blacksummit.org. blacksummit.org, and you can connect with us there. If you're interested in attending any of our free Sunday evening sessions that start at 7:15 p.m. Eastern, just connect with us through our website. We'll make sure that you get access. Hope to see you again soon. Good night.
Good night and God bless.